Today's top football managers demand something that sounds like a complete paradox. They want defenders who can orchestrate attacks and forwards who act as the very first line of defense. Even the goalkeeper is expected to operate as a proactive outfield player, initiating passing sequences rather than simply waiting on the goal line to block incoming shots. This highly fluid, interchangeable style is widely known as total football, and convention dictates that it was pioneered by the Dutch in the 1970s. But to truly grasp the mechanics of this system, we have to look back at the first 8 decades of the sport, when this kind of movement was considered completely impossible. Early 20th century football was defined by rigid specialization. A player's position was a fixed identity, dictating exactly where they stood and what they were allowed to do on the pitch. The default tactical structure of the era was the WM formation. Teams organized themselves into a strict 3-2-2-3 shape, dividing the field into compartmentalized zones. The instructions for players were absolute. Defenders stayed back to clear, strikers waited near the penalty box, and goalkeepers never left the line. That strict geographical discipline held firm until the early 1950s, when a group of Eastern European tacticians systematically dismantled it. Gusztáv Sebes took over the Hungarian national team in 1949 and immediately rejected the prevailing logic of the era. Drawing on his background as a union organizer, Sebes implemented a philosophy he called socialist football. He demanded that labor on the pitch be shared equally, requiring every player on his team to be technically capable of operating in any position. By forcing his squad to master multiple roles, Sebes erased the traditional boundaries of the pitch, and he started this experiment with the most isolated player on the field. Johan Kocsis, nicknamed the Black Panther, was Hungary's goalkeeper, but he refused to act like a static netminder. Instead of waiting for the attack, Kocsis sprinted far outside his penalty area to intercept through balls and break up plays before they materialized. This mobility effectively turned him into an additional defender. By sweeping up loose balls and distributing passes from deep in his own half, he created the blueprint for the sweeper keeper. Kocsis proved that to push defenders high up the pitch and suffocate the opponent, the goalkeeper must push up behind them to cover the empty space. At the opposite end of the pitch, Sebes deployed Nándor Hidegkuti as his center forward, but Hidegkuti rarely stayed in the center. Instead of anchoring himself against the opposing defense, Hidegkuti played as a false 9, intentionally dropping deep into the midfield. This forced man-marking defenders to either break their rigid formation to follow him or hold their line and give him space to dictate play. When defenders did follow Hidegkuti, they dragged themselves out of position. That allowed highly technical inside forwards, like Ferenc Puskás, to sprint into the newly vacated gaps and score. This constant, fluid rotation humiliated rigid defenses. In 1953, the Hungarians traveled to Wembley and dismantled a static England team 6-3, proving conclusively that positional mobility could tear a fixed structure apart. The Golden Team's dominance ended with the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, which scattered the squad's core players across Europe. While the team dissolved, their ideas migrated. English coaches who had observed this fluid style brought those tactical concepts to the Ajax club in Amsterdam. There, a manager named Rinus Michels inherited the Hungarian blueprint and began pushing it to its logical extreme. The isolated experiments of the 1950s had finally found a home where they could be formalized into a complete, overarching system. Michels, alongside a young Johan Cruyff, developed total football. They took the role-breaking behaviors of Kocsis and Hidegkuti and applied them to all 11 players, creating a team where anyone could attack or defend at any moment. This chart outlines Cruyff's triangles at Barcelona, a system designed to mathematically master space. The players would expand their shape to make the pitch as large as possible in possession and violently contract it to suffocate opponents when defending. The tactical trends dominating the sport today trace their lineage straight back through this system. Playmaking goalkeepers and inverted fullbacks are simply modern iterations of those original fluid concepts. The intricate, high-speed passing networks we watch today rely on players abandoning their fixed positions, a continuous motion that began the moment a group of Hungarians decided to kill the specialist.